Hello all, and welcome to Policy Systems and Environments, PSE 101. My name is Laura Vollmer, and I'm a community cooperative extension, and I'm also a member of the Shape Up San Francisco Steering Committee and the co-chair of the Policy Systems Environment Action Team, or PC as it's known. And I'm very excited about today's training, PSE 101. To give you a sense of the agenda, I'll start by sharing a bit of framing and background on policy systems and environmental changes, and then we'll transition into presentations and a panel of terrific community leaders who have made PSE changes happen in their communities. And I'm going to stop my screen for a moment right now and introduce you to the panel. So just a second. So the first panelist I'll introduce you to is Anthony Khalil from the Bayview Hunters Point Community Advocates. And Anthony earned his bachelor's degree in environmental studies with a concentration in environmental sustainability and social justice from San Francisco State. A son of first-generation immigrants, he was born and raised in the Santa Cruz Mountains in San Francisco, and he has extensive experience working with and mentoring youth and communities of color to foster deep connections with and commitment to our collective natural heritage. For 2 decades, he conducted environmental education and habitat restoration at Literacy for Environmental Justice and other local organizations supporting community and youth stewardship of natural areas in Southeast San Francisco. And he currently serves as an environmental justice advisor to the Bay Conservation. Next, I will introduce you to Angelica Cabande. And Angelica was born in the Philippines and immigrated to the US at the age of 8. And she has been an organizer for over 23 years, combining art, education, and organizing. She has supported the development of San Francisco residents to become engaged in issues of social justice, equity, and community planning, and has organized and mobilized residents in local and national issues. She started with SOMCAN in 2004 as a community organizer and became organizational director in 2010. So welcome, Angelica. We will ultimately have 2 folks joining us, the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation. He's a resident of the Tenderloin neighborhood and a food justice neighborhood leader with TNDC, or the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation. He's passionate about helping his community and all residents of the Tenderloin with food resources, health services, and more. And Dr. Jalal earned his bachelor's, master's, a doctorate degree, and he is also a physician. And for good measure, he graduated from the Community Health Worker Program at the College of San Francisco. So we'll look forward to seeing him.
Laura, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your audio is really breaking up.
Oh, weird. I don't know what I would do about that.
Although right now it sounds crystal clear.
Okay, we'll see if this is better. I'm so sorry, everyone.
It's like there's
all of these chats about it as well. All right, so last but in no way least is John McCormick. So John is the Healthy Retail Program Manager at TNDC, where he's worked since 2018. And prior to joining TNDC, he worked for 10 years in the restaurant industry, spent time traveling, and received a bachelor's degree in international studies. And in his free time, John likes to spend time outdoors gardening, playing basketball, reading, and exploring the Bay Area. And he holds a master's degree in nonprofit administration from the University of San Francisco. So my apologies about that. Maybe we'll make the bios available because I want you all to see this fantastic group of people. And I see we now have Dr. Jalal, so saying hello to Dr. Jalal. Perfect. So we will resume, or sorry, let me get the screen share back up. Great. And this training, I should say, is brought to you by a collaboration between Shape Up San Francisco and the Healthy Eating Active Living team at the San Francisco Department of Public Health. And I have to give a huge shout out to Marianne and Kim from SFDPH, who have done so much to make today's webinar possible. And funding from the soda tax was also instrumental in making this training happen. So a thank you to the soda tax funds. And the soda tax is perhaps the very first example of a policy systems and environmental change that we will see or talk about today. Also, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm joining you from the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, and I welcome you all to chat in. Let us know where you're joining us from today, and we pay our respects to the Ramaytush community and affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples. So I think Marian's going to launch a poll for us. And I'll give you a couple of minutes or seconds really to answer. All right, so we'll leave the poll up for folks to finish. It looks like about half of you have responded, and we'll come back to the results a little bit later. But now, as I said, I'll start by sharing a bit of framing. And so here we go. So I wanted to start us by grounding us in the idea and, of course, the reality that we as individuals absolutely do not have total control over our health outcomes. So some of you might have seen this graphic before or something like it, but just about a third of our health outcomes result from the individual health behaviors that we engage in. Our health outcomes are also driven by our demographics, socioeconomic factors, our physical environment, our access to healthcare, and also the quality of that care that we receive. So when we're thinking about advancing health for our communities, it's important to consider changing those other factors that can change circumstances and can also facilitate or make health promoting behaviors easier. I also wanted to share the social ecological model. I think Marianne was teasing me about how excited I was about this training, and this model is something that I find to be really helpful. So I'm sure many of you have seen this before, but this is another way of looking at drivers of individual behavior. So there are many things that influence our behaviors, and this model attempts to capture that and also outline some opportunities to intervene and improve health. So this particular version of the social ecological model is from the USDA, and it captures and sort of outlines the role that norms and values, sectors of influence, our environmental settings, the places where we live, work, learn, eat, etc., and individual factors, how they all affect our food and beverage intake and physical activity. And I'll give a disclaimer now that I think I probably will give many more times, or that you'll feel many more times, where all of these slides are a little bit more text heavy than I'd like them to be. But I hope they will be useful to you as a resource if you need them. So I think we will just pause for a second. Marianne, can you? Oh, I can do it. I'll share the results. Oh, there they are. So it looks like we're sort of a number of us, actually, I guess the vast majority of us are already doing PSE work. And then some folks are sort of either not doing it or in the pre-contemplative stage. So we will talk more about that later. So now at last, really getting into it, turning to the subject of today's webinar, PSE 101. So I try to use as few acronyms as possible, but this one is one that slips through sort of no matter how hard I try. So PSE stands for Policy, Systems, and Environment. And today we are talking about policy systems, environmental changes, and how they can improve community health. So PSE's change strategies are approaches to behavior and cultural change that aim to create lasting improvements in individual and community health and well-being. And PSE changes work by making healthier choices both more practical and also more accessible to all members of a community. And when making PSE changes, I think it's really important to recognize the history that created the policy and practices that we're trying to change. These policies and practices are often rooted in structural racism that have resulted in unequal access to environments that support healthy living. For example, neighborhoods have underfunded or unequal access to park and recreational spaces, or they have limited access to healthy food or an overabundance of access to unhealthy food. And so throughout the process of making change, we should name and address racial and other inequities that we're trying to address. And this is something that I think we'll come back to in the panel discussion. So diving a little deeper into the P, the S, and the E, we'll start with the P. What is policy change? Policy changes include changes to sort of so-called big P policy, like laws, ordinances, and regulations, and little p policy, things like rules and protocols. And I think there can be a tendency to think about policy as being exclusively the purview of legislation and that lobbying is the only way to affect policy change, but that's not true at all. Think about organizations that you have been involved with, and I'm sure that they have lots of rules and protocols, and those are all potential levers that we can pull to promote health. So here are a handful of examples, and I also welcome folks as we make our way through the P, the S, and the E to add to the chat changes that you have either implemented or that you're excited about or that you think are promising. So some examples of policy changes would be passing a policy that requires restaurants to serve milk or water with kids' meals. And this is actually a policy that we have here in the state of California that's largely unimplemented and also monitored. So this is somewhere else we could do some work. Passing a law to allow residents to plant community gardens in vacant lots, establishing healthy concession stand policies, adopting the good food purchasing policy, and that could be an organization, an institution, a city, a county, a state, a school policy that prohibits selling unhealthy food as part of school fundraisers, human resources policy that require healthy food to be served at meetings, or policy, like let's say within an organization that requires after-school programs to include physical activity. So those are all examples of policy changes. So moving on to the S, or systems changes, these are changes to organizational, institutional, and community norms and processes. If you have ever proposed a change or asked about a process, I think this often happens to folks when they come into a new organization or a new group and you have a question about how things run and somebody says, that's just not how we do things. There is an opportunity there to sort of affect the S. Systems change can help us to break through those norms or habits. So here are some examples, coordinating with a partner to screen all participants for CalFresh eligibility and enrolling eligible participants. Closely related would be like screening for food insecurity in a healthcare setting, serving breakfast in the classroom or offering second chance breakfast as part of the school meal program, changing procurement practices to source local fruits and vegetables for meal and food distribution programs, creating a certification process for school bake sales to ensure that they're meeting that wellness policy, or opening schoolyards for recreation on weekends and evenings. So finally, the E for environment. And environmental change is change that's made to physical, social, and economic environments. And physical changes can be the addition of new infrastructure, or this is like a little bit tricky, the addition of new programming and services. So that will change the physical environment. Social changes, which would be a positive change in attitudes and behaviors, and increase in supportive attitudes about a health practice, or economic changes. So those are either financial incentives or disincentives that promote health. So double up food bucks as an example of that. Here are some more: incorporating sidewalks, paths, pedestrian-friendly intersections, et cetera. In other words, achieving complete streets. That would be an environmental change. Increasing the availability of healthy food choices in restaurants or cafeterias, or decreasing access. Ensuring access to water in public parks and spaces. Making some change to the food access in a local community by bringing in new access points like farmers markets or food distributions. And then it can be sort of more small things like installing signage on already established walking or biking routes, and a prompt to take the stairs instead of the elevator. And that is one that almost always works on me. So I also thought it would be useful to try and distinguish between program or event approaches versus PSE approaches. And I will say that this is, of course, very overly simplified, but programs are often time limited. And as a result, they may also make shorter term change. They tend to be focused on individual behavior change, and they are also very funding dependent. And I'm sure many of us have had the experience of having to either end or offer a program because funding ended or changed. And sort of by contrast, PSE change can be foundational. So it can help to shift population behavior and culture over time, and it can help support sustainable ongoing change. I do want to clarify, though, that we absolutely cannot abandon all program work for PSE work, and they often work, PSE and program work hand in hand. So program and events can be critical to build support for PSE changes, and they are also critical for unlocking the full potential of PSE changes too. So just a few examples. A community bike ride could help folks feel more comfortable on newly established complete streets. An open gym night might help a school district decision maker see how much enthusiasm and demand there is for facility use, which could help get a joint use agreement across the finish line. A market with upgraded equipment and signage could be stocking more healthy options, and a shopping tour might help community members see that change firsthand and encourage them to shop there. And finally, a garden workshop might help build skills for folks who are advocating for that garden, and it might help them influence the design and also be ready to dive in when the garden is created. I also wanted to say just a very quick word about capturing the impact or evaluating policy systems and environmental change work. So as I think we're about to hear, PSE change can be really complex to institute and also can be pretty slow moving. And so it can be hard to see the full impact all at once. So here are some tools that are potentially useful for both sort of needs assessment and evaluation, things like environmental assessments, like walk audits, observations, stakeholder interviews and focus groups, and most crucially, community feedback. And that's something that I think we'll hear lots about from the panelists. So just to finish out this sort of opening section, I wanted to hear from you. What are some PSE changes that have helped to make healthy eating and active living more practical and accessible to you, your family, your community, et cetera? And we had planned to have you use the annotate tool, but it doesn't seem to be working. So if you want to just put thoughts in the chat, I will transfer them over. You're also welcome to unmute and share. I will offer as an example, one small thing that I think about all the time is this thing called the leading pedestrian interval, which is, some of you may have noticed that like the walk sign goes on before the light goes green. So as a pedestrian, I feel a little bit safer entering the intersection and making my way across the crosswalk. So that's an example of a PSE that is present in our daily lives. So again, you can feel free to unmute and share or chat. Four-way stops at intersections. Great. Awesome. Sunday streets. Bike lanes and farmers markets. Oh, thank goodness, someone's helping me out. Free State Park Days, that's a really cool one. So keep them coming, things big or small. Great. Well, I think we've got some across both, yeah, across both active living and healthy eating. And Marianne is getting these filled in, and we will share the full list with you all later. But thank you so much for contributing. I think sometimes it can feel like we are not making progress, or there are so many things that there are still left to do. But I think it's really important to recognize the PSE changes that we have already accomplished and that are helping us all live more active and healthy lives. So I think I'm gonna stop now, and we will transition over to the presentations. So let me get back into slideshow mode. So we'll shift over now to the presentations from the panelists. We'll start with TNDC, or the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation. We'll then hear from South of Market Community Action Network, or SOMCAN, and finally from Bayview Hunters Point Community Advocates. So each presenter will share some initial thoughts and slides, and we'll have a couple of minutes afterwards for clarifying questions. But we'll save the bulk of our conversation for a panel discussion after the presentations. And on that note, we welcome you to sort of pop into chat at any time, questions that you have, and we can either relay them to the presenters for clarifying questions, or save them for the panel discussion at the end. So with that, it's over to Dr. Jalal and John.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jalal. I am food justice leader at TNDC Healthy Retail. So today I will talking about Tenderloin Food Policy Council. We start about history about how it's come this is idea. Next slide, please. This idea, it's coming from after our food justice academic class. We were 9 people, include my wife. After this class, we had a lot of project about how we can solve our food problem in Tenderloin in our community. When we did a meeting with our instructor, John McCormick, at the office, we decided to create Tenderloin Food Congress. From this, we start to do a focus group. A focus group, it's from our community is, as you know, is in our community is a diversity group people. It's different language. We start to do a focus group from March to December 2022. That's it. In this is focus group participate 140 almost, and it was 21 focus group in a different language. It's Hispanic, Chinese, Arabic, and English. Include the Afro-American community and Filipino community in Tenderloin. They include in this meeting. And this is focus group. We learn them how it's managed or facilitate. This is focus group by self in different language. So when we analyze it, this is a data. We get they in the different community, they have different problem. It's 45 food issue in this is diversity community in Tenderloin. Next slide, please. This is this is history about to found this is a problem or solve this issue. It start when we start a meeting in 2023 in July. We sent a message or invitation in different language. We did a flyer in different language. We participate all the member of the diversity community in Tenderloin. And this is time what we did connection with the people who live in this is different community. And we invite in the general meeting. The general meeting, it was participating. This is general meeting is 110 people. When this is a meeting, we provide interpreting in different language, in Arabic, Spanish, Chinese. We provide food. We provide paper information in different language. So we listen, this is for this is people, and we get this is information, and we analyze it. This is information for the next two meeting. This is July and August. Participate 40 and 60 people in that meeting. And we divided this is group for group by language. Group Chinese speaking, group Spanish speaking, and English speaking and Arabic speaking people. And we did the sign for the people by different language, and we give him 5 different color stickers. And this is group, it's go to the sign by the language and to put 4, 5, because we has 45. It's a lot a problem or issue in food issue in Tenderloin. That's people they put this is stickers in this is science, and we analyze it. This is information, and we get the result. What you see in this slide, it's 5 issue. The most important for all the community. It doesn't matter. It's Chinese or Spanish or Arabic or English or Afro-American or family Filipino. It's the most important. It was voucher, veggie voucher, because this is can be give him access to food like halal food. Because we did connection between this is voucher and corner store. They can use at healthy corner store in Tenderloin, where they can buy this is food. The next problem, it was the farmers market. It's farmers markets. It's important for Tenderloin because they get access for healthy food and cheap organic food. Number 3, people, they say the problem, they need more money to buy a food, especially healthy food and organic food. The number 4, the problem, they find it, we find it's the problem, food corner store, it's they have high cost or expensive. Number 5, meat and fish in Tenderloin is very expensive. That's what we get in the and this is a result in that time. Now I will be give my director John McCormick. Thank you.
Thanks, Jalal. Yep. So, yeah, thank you, Jalal. So, a big part of what the next steps are in terms of engaging the community are to develop short-term and long-term policy plans and policy platforms. But, the thing that we believe is really going to make this work successful and really be able to move these campaigns forward is these are the community building events where we're getting to know each other a little bit more and getting to build a stronger community in order to really fight for these issues that Jalal just outlined in the previous slide. So we're really excited for some community potlucks and some field trips where we can get together and build the community. Yeah, the slide was supposed to be a little bit, I think, got a little out of order, but yeah, the first meeting for the Food Policy Council saw 103 people. Every meeting since then has averaged about 40. And then the engaging the community process. So we felt like it was really important in this process for community to buy into what we're doing and for the community to really be a part of what's happening with the Food Policy Council. And so really at every step of the way here, the community was involved, not just in the process, but in the decision-making process as well. So part of this was that we trained folks in how to facilitate focus groups, and the community actually was part of facilitating the focus groups. And the leadership as well for the Food Policy Council comes from the community. So there's a leadership group for the Food Policy Council that consists of 15 community members. And at the leadership meetings, we talk about who's going to facilitate the meetings, who's going to take notes at the meetings, who's going to make sure everyone gets the food and runs the food line. And the community members, everyone in the community is really taking a step up and making sure that these meetings go smoothly. And on our end, TNDC's end, for us, it's about giving everybody the tools and making sure that they're successful in doing this and setting them up and putting them in places of success so that they can facilitate these meetings and they really notice. And it's not TNDC's meeting, it's really the community's meeting and their issues that they're moving forward. So this picture is actually of community members facilitating the last meeting, and they did an awesome job. It was really cool. Yeah, thanks. So part of this that has been really great for us is this community action model that was provided to us from DPH. And so at each step of the way, we sort of use this community action model so that, in the first step here, we talk about training the participants. And this really looks like us coming in and working with folks on how to run focus groups, basically. Then, step two, how do we understand what was said in the focus groups? Community members coming in and really sitting with us and looking at that data and being like, okay, this was said this many times. Let's make sure we pull this out. Analyzing the results. The step two would be doing the focus groups. Step three would be like sort of analyzing it and finding that information. And step four, I believe, is sort of where we're at now in terms of what we're trying to do. Like we've narrowed the issues down, and now we're in this process of selecting the activism, selecting the action, and really deciding how we're going to address these issues. And step five, we're sort of in between step four and step five of maintaining the momentum with the group as we're developing actions for the issues. So yeah, if you're like looking to do PSE work, definitely, this community action model is helpful for us. Yeah, next slide, please. And then, so the program to PSE approach was a little bit different for us because our Healthy Retail program is based in the community organizing office here at TNDC. And so we're really grateful that we get to work with community organizers who've been doing this for a long time. And their approach really is about empowering the community to take back their systems and to really listen to community members and to listen to what the community has to say so that the community can be in charge of developing the changes and it's about them. It's not about the nonprofit. It's giving the tools to the community to be successful. And so we're really grateful that we didn't really have to transition so much from the PSE approach, because our work was embedded in the community organizing office at TNDC, where people have been doing this for a very, very long time. So super grateful. And shout out to the community organizing team here, TNDC. And then I think, yeah, the last slide. Yeah, so the slides got a little, so on this slide, I also wanted to mention that Tammy and Austin are a part of our team, and that this Austin Dalmaso and Tammy Hume are a part of our team, and they are really integral in everything that we've done so far, and really integral into putting this PowerPoint presentation together as well. So I want to make sure to shout out the team on this. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both so much. So welcome questions. Does anyone have a sort of burning question for Jalal or John? You're welcome to chat it in or unmute and ask. If not, they might be saving all the hard ones for the discussion, so get ready. In that case, I will pass it over to you, Angelica.
Thank you. Magandang hapon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me and SOMCAN here today to share with you our work. SOMCAN, next slide, please. SOMCAN was established in 2000 to nurture family and individual wellness and cultivate collective power among low-income and immigrant communities to create a more just society. Next slide, please. As a multi-issue, multi-strategy organization, we work to improve the lives on a family and individual level, as well as affect broader social change by engaging in culturally competent services, policy campaigns, civic engagement, advocacy, and community organizing. As you see on the top, these are the culturally competent direct services we provide, and we work on a wide range of issues from tenant rights to language access to community planning and environmental justice. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sorry. As one of the largest Asian ethnic groups in the US, there is limited public health research on the Filipino community and chronic disease, which really led SOMCAN to think about how can we ensure that there is actual stories of our community, and that, you know, we'll have something tangible to bring to our elected officials and other department people, right? So in response to these gaps, we partnered with the San Francisco State University and SDDT, whom funded the Kalusugan ng Bayan, our Health, Our Community report, which you see in the middle, which is an initiative to address chronic diseases in our community. And we actually did this by, first building the leadership of a multi-generational San Francisco residents across the city, from Soma, Tenderloin, Excelsior, and other parts of the city, where they learn how to conduct community participatory research and other leadership skills, as well as helping us shape the surveys to ask our community members about health and wellness. And they actually went out to the community and collected over 300 surveys and conducted numerous focus groups. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight in that report was in the report, when we wrote it after, collecting the surveys for I think 2 to 3 months, we collected it. And we wrote a report with Professor Ruby Turulba from San Francisco State University. After the report came out, we also made sure that in the surveys, we asked actually residents their recommendation on addressing some of the health issues, right? Because we wanted to make sure their voice is really part of the report, and also help guide the work of SOMCAN and any community groups that are interested in doing health and wellness for the Filipino community. So one of the things that came out of there is a recommendation in the report was residents really expressed they want the city to maintain and expand park and open space to promote exercise and recreation in the southern market. Next slide, please. And real quick, the reason why residents in Soma emphasize this is because in Soma, there are numerous quality of life issues such as traffic congestions. We are a gateway to 3 major freeways. The neighborhood bears the brunt of all major development in the city, but lacks park and open space per capita. And also, there's a lot of pedestrian safety issues in the area, as you could see in this map that was provided by Vision Zero. Next slide, please. So with that, next slide, please. So with that, in 2022, we took on the Soma Slow Street campaign because we were one of the neighborhoods that was being removed from the permanent slow streets. This slide just shows SFMTA's direct survey from in the bottom, the outcome of the surveys asking residents why they wanted Slow Street in Soma, which they conducted in 2021. So you could see how we were really shocked and surprised that they were removing our neighborhood from the permanent slow street. Out of the 19 slow streets, we were one of the 3 being removed. Some neighborhoods might not like slow streets, but in our neighborhood, they really wanted this because this is one of the only things that they could have in the area, right? As we're still continuing to advocate for more parks and open space. Next slide, please. So with that, the residents and our members wanted to raise this concern, and we created a campaign plan. We did a hybrid community meetings in person and online with over 15 organizations and hundreds of residents and stakeholders in the Soma. We collected postcards in different languages. There's some samples here in English, Filipino, and Chinese. I don't have the Russian photo, but we also did that. And we collected over 300 postcards. We also coordinated community meetings with residents, our supervisor, and some of the board of directors from SFMTA. And we also went out to the SFMTA board of directors hearings to drop off the card, but also have the residents, give them an opportunity to really speak and hear from them. We have actually a video here. If you don't mind playing, that'd be great.
Ay, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Ako po ay si Lucy Patricio, nakatira sa Suma para parte sa unang network ng Slow Street. Ang mga kalye ng Mabini, Bonifacio, Lapu-Lapu, Rizal at Tandang Sora, hinikayat ko po kayong isama sila sa permanenteng plano ng Slow Street. Ang mga kalyeng ito lamang ang Slow Street ang buong Suma. Kaya po hinihingi namin ang inyong suporta para sa mga katulad naming senior ay safety paglakad at ligtas sa anumang panganib. Salamat po.
Hi, my name is Raymond Castillo. I'm just going to translate. My name is Lucy Patricio. I live in the Soma, part of the first network of the Slow Street, and in the street of Mabini, Bonifacio, Lapu-Lapu, Rizal, and Tandang Sora. I encourage everyone to make the Slow Street permanent. I am asking for your support so that just like us seniors, we can walk safely and safe from any fear. Salamat po. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So, of course, we were really happy when we finally got the slow streets, Soma back into the slow street, permanent slow street list. And we also didn't want to just have a small celebration of like, yay, we won. We wanted to take this opportunity to actually continue the education to our community of, things like this don't just happen. We have to make sure that we collectively come together and fight for these things and continue advocating for together to ensure things like this continues to stay in our neighborhood. So next slide, please. So we actually took our time to create partner with SFMTA and the Parks Alliance as well as SDDT to actually make sure that the streets that we fought for wouldn't be forgotten, right? Wouldn't just have a small sign of this is a slow street, but actually for the community to come together and feel ownership in the space. So we actually hired bilingual artists to create ground mural artwork, and we made sure they actually conducted community meetings with residents to make sure that the images that we're putting on the ground really reflect the voices and the wants of the residents in the area, because they're going to be seeing that every day of their life, right? So we want to make sure they feel ownership and also the community. Next slide, please. So we after they did their community meetings, we actually also organized community painting days where we had over 100 people come in different times of the week to actually help us paint. And then lastly, we had a Soma block party, which I'll end my presentation with this video for you guys.
Some celebrations.
Are we ready? Umaga po. How's everybody doing this morning? Hello to all the beautiful people, the beautiful seniors looking lovely. And we just want to congratulate everybody, the whole community, but especially Samken for leading this effort to get this great victory for our community. To have this slow street here in the Soma helps accomplish that goal. Shout out to Samken for all this great work and the entire community.
It's one of our tradition to always have a ribbon cutting with all the people that made this happen. And this really shows the collective effort, the collective work of all of us coming together, advocating for this street. 1, 2, 3.
I'm really happy we finally revealed the mural, all the mural to the community.
It's a really beautiful and special experience for me to be able to be part of this community and to be able to make art here. So I'm really happy to be here.
I really just want to bring my good luck wish to everyone passing by so they can have a little joy.
It's so fun. Glad we're able to do this for the community. It's nice for me as a painter to have art in a public space. Normally my paintings are in galleries, so to be able to share that to the public is really amazing.
How do you feel about working together with me?
I didn't imagine working with anyone else.
We are a good team.
Yeah, me, Therese and Casey for sure worked really well together. I just want to say thank you to Rhea and Casey. They made this experience really, really nice for me, and it's really great collaborating with the two of them.
All right, thank you. So, we took those opportunities to continue educating our community, but also the larger community of, again, things like this aren't just given to us. We need to continue advocating and organizing around these things. And, we took the opportunity when we're doing community paintings to educate the folks that was there about, why this is happening and how did it come to this, and it was a way for us to really continue building our organizing efforts in the SOMA and in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angelica. Any questions for Angelica? You're welcome to either put them in the chat or unmute and ask. Or keep saving up those hard ones for the panel discussion. All right. Well, Anthony, it's over to you.
Wonderful. Greetings and community family. Everyone can hear me, hopefully. Good. I'm getting a nice thumbs up. I always prefer this in person, but I want to appreciate all my colleagues and joining each other in community to be educated around these vital topics of determining the collective future of our beloved communities, as well as addressing the injustice of our history and how that relates today. Before I get started, I want to start with a quote of the Honorable Marcus Garvey: "A people without knowledge of their past history and culture is like a tree without roots." And a lot of our work is returning back to these roots and this original guidance from the ones that came before us. I start here with a picture because many folks often hear the story of Bayview Hunters Point, the community that I serve, that I'm a part of, as one of always of resistance, and yet we often forget to celebrate the success that we came from, the honor that we came from, the blessings that we came from. Just a little bit about our organization. Again, my name is Anthony Khalil. Thank you, Laura, for that introduction. It was a mouthful, all of our bios, but what I hope that folks got away from it is that we're surrounded here by people who are unafraid to take leadership and determine our collective future, not just myself, but everyone here. You being here today is learning what others have done and being inspired and hopefully adapting it to serve your needs and your community's needs. So one thing I want to remind folks is this is not unique to just us and our neighborhoods. We hope for these strategies of PSE, these ways of dismantling and disturbing, can be adapted to your own communities for solutions and for a greater collective future. Our organization was founded in 1994. It's a grassroots organization founded, governed, and operated by long-term members of the vulnerable environmental justice community of Bayview Hunters Point, San Francisco. Our programs combine community organizing with education, advocacy, and something new to even me in this capacity, direct services. So that was kind of a policy change in itself internally. You know, policy isn't always at the foot of government. We can lead our own policies. We seek to build the neighborhood's capacity of self-determining, fully autonomous force of social change in today's San Francisco. And as many long-timers or newcomers to the city, we know that change is the only constant. I start off here with this slide reminding us of our legacy of food sovereignty in Bayview Hunters Point. Most often the misnomer that people heard, or the introduction, if you're not from the neighborhood or affiliated with the neighborhood, you think of Bayview Hunters Point in many different terms in regards to our battle against toxicity or environmental justice struggles, or the most evergreen struggle around social justice. And as we know, the approach around environmental justice parallels the approach of policy, systems, and environment. It integrates and it sits as those nexus of how those social determinants of health really complement and sometimes counteract one another. Next slide, please. Something that I wanted to invoke with that previous slide of that historic and that quote of, if we don't know where we're from, it's hard to know where we're heading, okay? And it also gives us an idea where we're at. Bayview Hunters Point has always been a neighborhood of extreme pride, of extreme resilience, of ingenuity, of trailblazing, first in many different. We are a proud community, but yet we are environmental justice community impacted by various terms of not only environmental toxicity, but as Ms. Laura was bringing up, the social determinants and all the different factors that affect not only our quality of life, but our life expectancy, okay? Those are two very distinct but interconnected things. So prior to approaching the efforts that we currently are operating in with the food sovereignty work that we're a part of, it started off as an idea of many local community members and residents on what are we going to do about this quote unquote food desert issue, okay? And I said it was a misnomer by calling our neighborhood a food desert because, as many folks recognize, a desert is a natural phenomenon, and what we're dealing here is food apartheid. Food apartheid is a human-created phenomenon, and it is not just theory, but is put into practice in environmental justice worldwide, and environmental justice communities worldwide. And as you see, the epicenter of those struggles not only reside in Bayview Hunters Point, but to my sister neighborhoods in the Tenderloin, Soma area, my sister neighborhoods in the Outer Mission, Excelsior, in Chinatown, the most impacted neighborhoods, not only dealing with food access, but health. And of course, there it is again, that quality of life. One of the biggest determinants of our quality of life is access to healthy food. Everyone eats, everyone breathes, yet there is an inequitable approach to how we get our food, where it comes from, how we pay for it. I'm so glad that John and Dr. Halal brought up the fact from their focus groups that how money, how economics plays such a hard role. And when you are representing and coming from a neighborhood and community that almost triples the national average in unemployment and almost triples the infant mortality rate in the city, then we have to look at that with a much greater angle, not of just food security, but food sovereignty. So when I mentioned earlier that we were drafted into the direct service of food sovereignty efforts and supplying our local constituency, our neighbors, our community members with fresh, nutrient-dense, high-quality food, we looked at it through the lens of food sovereignty, which is putting power and it's redistributing, here it is, that power in the food system. So that system in PSE, for us, it's not just taking the system down, but it is taking the power from that system into the hands that are most burdened. Before I go into how our food travels throughout our community and how it impacts the lives of our community members, I want to remind everyone that all food that is in our grocery stores, from the Tenderloin to the Sunset to our hotel stores, they come through our neighborhood. Unless it is grown in someone's backyard, unless it is brought in from a direct farm that you brought in, all food that comes in the city comes through this area of the city. I'm calling you in right now, and this is where I do like the webinar approach. Let's see if I could turn that around. Oh, well, I can't turn around my screen here, but I'm calling in from that space. So I'm place-based here in the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood at the San Francisco Produce Market, where over 30 plus vendors and thousands of workers come in and out of here, moving the food that comes up on our plates. Now, we often omit the first step of that, or the steps prior to that, whereas where this food is coming from, how is it grown, what are the practices that are used when growing it, and sometimes the forgotten part, who benefits, who receives the economic benefits, the health benefits of this operation. Our neighborhood sits on the other side and experiencing the most environmental impacts and burdens. So how we redistributed that is by taking the need of access to healthy, nutrient-dense, low cost, high quality food, and making sure it can not only be accessible, but it meets the needs of food security and hunger relief. Most often when we approach, here's a policy, most often when we approach food distribution, it's looked at through the lens of hunger relief, which is making sure food shows up and that we feed the people. But when we look at it through food sovereignty, we value every stage of how this food was produced, where it ends up, who it nourishes, and who benefits again. So the supply channels that we currently operate, the impetus for them was actually research. And I saw that as a thread throughout SOMCAN as well as TNDC's presentations, that we might be scrappy, we might be small, we might be a nonprofit that is community-based, but we believe in the power of data information. And most often that information and data can be used against us. When put in the hands of community, it can be exactly what we want it to be, empowering. And through that process of querying and investigating what is our food buying habits, we uncovered the need of not only this legacy of, I want to stretch back to that first picture of how there was food cooperatives in the 1960s and 70s here. But yet most often all we hear is the story of, for the last 10 years, how there's been numerous grocery stores that have came in the neighborhood that have set up for a couple years, and it's less. Two that I like to mention in particular, because we can't just, we don't want to just say it like it's a mystery. International Corporation, Fresh and Easy, came in here. It's a London-based corporation. They lasted 3 years. You know, we knew why they wanted to come in. The next one after that, another local franchise, you know, struggled with being able to turn a buck. And so there's these different effects on how we can sustain access, but then where are the benefits is once they fail, they're gone and nothing replaces them. So through the process of direct outreach, through the process of direct mailers to over 6,000 homes on both sides of 3rd Street, because as many folks don't understand, the demographics of our neighborhood has changed immensely in the last 30 years since our organization is founded. You know, we have to have diverse forums in diverse language and accessible points there. So I saw that also as a thread in my colleagues. Grounding you all in this slide before we go to the next, through that process of inquiry, and you know, we all have this drain. We can't expect our constituents and those clients, especially in need, to take the time out to be vulnerable, to share what they truly want. But we were able to do that due to not only our established history, but because we have we're accountable to report this back and do something about it and create action. That process of inquiry identified where is there the greatest need, how we can actually improve access without creating new distribution sites. So that creates a lot of opportunities for home delivery and that type of distribution supply. So the crucible of 2020 really took a lot of these ideas that we had through our research, and it drafted us right into direct action. Because what happened was, being a trusted organization in the neighborhood means you're accessible to the neighborhood. People can come into your office. People can call our executive director. People can call my phone. And that's exactly what happened at all hours of the night. Our executive director received over 400 calls a week from people who were scared, who didn't know what to do. And it's not only because they were hungry, there's a lack of places that we can even access here to get the food that we need during a time of emergency such as the pandemic. So a lot of those operations that we conducted at that time were charitable. And what we mean by that is essentially the same model of hunger relief, yet done in a way of food sovereignty. So that is making sure that those vulnerable were not stretched further. So offering home delivery. This is all free of cost. This also is culturally relevant. That's a term that I feel like is getting outdated, but just to bring it back, it essentially is meaning we want to give food that is not just nutrient dense and healthy, but it's what people want, and having the dignity of choice. Okay, that's a concept that no matter how hungry you are, you still want the dignity of choice, because that in essence is who we are as human beings. We want to be able to live the lives that we want to lead and love the life that we lead. So these charitable operations not only consist of food insecure households, which we currently do, but we also serve our unhoused population here. Many of our unhoused population have mobile homes, RVs, campers as it's called. As folks have heard, there's actually 2 permanent site or semi-permanent sites out here in the neighborhood where unhoused, mobile housed homeless populations can actually park in and live safely. So we are one of the few organizations who have weekly rounds, because we do build relationship with our unhoused neighbors and we see the unseen. Now, many operations, and this will probably bleed into like, how do we sustain this work? You usually can only sustain that work relying on food recovery products. And what I mean by that is relying on our good neighbors and partners and friends at the SF Marin Food Bank. We're very thankful and for their role within hunger relief. And many of us would not exist without that asset, that accessible asset. but not all of that there is you do have to pay for it at times. It is situated at certain spots that maybe our neighbors cannot make it to or cannot wait in line. The cultural relevant access and so on. So there's many other complexities along with why the hunger relief food bank model doesn't always work. I cannot be dismissive, but what I want to say is sometimes we have to be innovative and understand that we have to look at the system and policies of how we're doing the work and change it. And that's exactly what COVID forced. Previously, a lot of these operations relied solely on food recovered products. So we reverse engineered that, knowing that our idea was not only to address the food insecurity and food justice impacts of the neighborhood, but it's enhancing our economics. It's enhancing, the life expectancy, and it's enhancing our relationship with supporting and providing mutual aid to where our food comes from. If we cannot support the same things that support us, I think ultimately these systems would fail. And that's what makes this work even harder. We can go on to the next slide where I can start talking about some of the ways to sustain this work outside of programmatic grant-driven work. This is a real busy, I might be good at a lot of things, but one of them is not making slideshows. I thrive better in situations where I meet and feel you and see and take questions. But I wanted to put together a slide that, I'm just going to walk us through that shows a little bit of the approach of what we did initially around surveying our populations, around where their food buying habits are, so we can understand what happens. And real quick takeaway on that is something that we always knew in our hearts, but this really solidified, is the fact that in an extractive economy, it is forcing a lot of our neighbors and community members to actually leave the neighborhood to get the food that they need. Okay, so that right there in itself is contributing to the the lack of a local economic system that is functioning here in our neighborhood. Now, I know our city is only 7 by 7, but we have 11 districts, and each district has the potential to have a local economic base. And that has been a long-term vision of not only of our organization, but many other cohorts throughout the decades here. So reviving that through inquiry and through focus groups, through one-on-ones. We actually hosted a group called the Southeast Council, very similar to TNDC's Healthy Retail Council, and a lot of the great work that SOMCAN does through a lot of their different programmatic work is understanding a council of intergenerational council to help shape our collective future. So taking that information and actually turning it into a business. It's hard to see here, but my slide to the right shows our website, which is the Bayview Community Co-op, which was born out of the desire to restore this legacy of a community cooperative grocery store in the neighborhood. I already shared that there was one once before, about 40 plus years ago. We're now in 2000 and we have still not restored this PSE approach and changing and not repeating thank you for putting it in there. It is open to any member, any resident, any member outside of the neighborhood, but yet only pickup sites and delivery is conducted in the area codes 94124 and 94134. So we're exclusively trying to measure our success within our neighborhood. It is a discounted community-supported agricultural program, and it is actually the first product of the emerging Bayview Community Co-op. Now, there's no co-op, there's no identified building yet, but there is definitely a lot of movement towards this. And this first product allows us to build not only a constituency of folks who want fresh, high quality produce delivered or picked up in their neighborhood where they couldn't previously, but it builds a constituency of that local food system, something that is adjacent to where I'm sitting at here, but yet interconnected and is more beneficial than receiving the burdens of that. This discounted community-supported agricultural program ranges from 19 to 29. It's self-disclosure, and we also accept EBT at our local healthy retail store, which we partner with. I'm so glad that TNDC was here, and we look at them as really some of the trailblazers of the healthy retail program. but knowing that the healthy retail program, it ebbs and flows with funding. You know, we also conduct wholesale distribution to our local corner store. And that's something I did well over 20 years ago, where we took big tobacco money and we took away unhealthy products to bring in more healthy options into our corner stores. It was over 20 years ago. And we were dealing with big tobacco. Today, you can say big tobacco has been replaced by big soda. And the interconnections of the corporate responsibility of the impacts on the health of our BIPOC communities, in particular, our environmental justice community here. Last and next slide, please. Thank you so much. So this, in conclusion here, that I'm just trying to paint a little bit more of the vision, which is emerging. We have a community cooperative steering committee, which is essentially the founding mothers and fathers, aunties and uncles of the Bayview Community Co-op, which unlike other worker-owned co-ops here in San Francisco, there's very few left of them, trying to look at even cooperative economics differently, especially being a Black-led organization in a white-dominated space. You know, it's a much different paradigm. It's a much different lens of impact, of experience that we offer. And a worker-owned cooperative can only address part of that. A community-owned cooperative, which understands how there's charitable aspects around hunger relief. There's the fact that we don't have access to spaces and we have to be innovative by partnering with the traditional industries such as healthy retailers and our local liquor stores. It's also understanding, and this is something that I omitted because often it's the traditional form of our business, which is partnering through contracts and city supply. I have sister organizations who have made it on the upside of that, which is supplying food districts in the East Bay, such as Mandela Marketplace, which has been a coach, a dear coach. There's been key players there that have coached myself and our team here around how to operate in this industry. Because what I didn't hear much about is we're talking about food, we're talking about, you know, access to food and health, but yet who are the key agents with this? And the key agents in this landscape here is traditional, and it's the bottom line and making money on very small margins. So if we have this idea to create a community-owned, you know, cooperative grocery store, we still have to sustain it and make business sense. So understanding what is our policy around products? What is our policy about suppliers? What is our policies where we know that when we pay for the true cost of these products, it's cost inefficient, okay? So I wanna really take my hat off to those innovative groups such as the Food as Medicine Collaborative, you know, the host of this event, the Soda Tax Fund, to understand that these policies have to change and business cannot be as usual. We cannot just rely on food bank products. In fact, there's ways that we can be much more impactful and center equity in our transactions. And even though these are business transactions, these are cultural these are agents of change within those transactions. So being able to contract with local clinics and supply them has been able to underwrite and sustain all of our charitable work, our public sales and healthy retail, to underwrite the discounted cost, because we're essentially selling those at cost. So I don't want to bore folks by the nitty gritty and the dollars and cents. I've been in this work for many years now in regards to addressing environmental justice in my community, and how it manifests today has led us to acquire, which I was unable to show you all, a warehouse space where we never, you know, where we've been left out. So if this work and all the work that we're all a part of here takes us into places that traditionally we were left out, that means we're doing something right. And I encourage folks to sustain that and learn and keep on being informed by community members to guide us through this process. It gets overwhelming because, you know, a lot of the times I say that we're like dolphins swimming with sharks. A lot of the vendors here are sharks. They want to make their money. They want to move product. We have different metrics. We want to serve our community. We want to ensure that our orders are going to those patients in need. And that's a much different way of doing business. But there are ways to learn from one another and ways to leverage that so truly we can, you know, achieve the collective future that we all deserve. And that's at the essence of environmental justice. So I just want to thank everyone for hearing our story of how we were drafted throughout these decades into the work that we're at now. We didn't know that it would get here. You know, sometimes you're just part of these groups and you donate your time, and allowed us to acquire the infrastructure and the environmental change that we need so that we can serve our community and make the greatest impact. So thank you all. I salute, of course, SOMCAN and TNDC for joining us on this panel. And Laura, I appreciate you, really starting us up on this 101 to understand how these impacts, these various impacts show up, but how we're deconstructing and doing something about it today. So really grateful for that. And I look forward to engaging with you more.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anthony. We are now going to transition into the panel discussion. And before we do that, I thought I would just sort of quickly tie together some of the themes that I heard. So thank you so much to John and Dr. Jalal for sharing how integral community engagement and leadership have paved the way for successful PSE approach, and also your ongoing commitment to identifying new PSE strategies through your Food Policy Council. Angelica, I loved hearing how the sort of community report that identified open space and pedestrian safety issues, you were able to sort of match it up so closely with the opportunity to advocate for keeping that Soma Slow Street, but then leveling up the Soma Slow Street with art and community. And that video, I think, was so lovely and so heartwarming. And finally, thank you, Anthony, for showing how your food apartheid lens, and I like the pandemic as a crucible, was a catalyst for you all addressing those needs through market-based and cooperative solutions. So we are now, I'm going to stop the screen share. I think Kim's going to pin these panelists so you can see their faces as we discuss. And certainly we welcome questions from the audience. So feel free to pop them in chat. But I am going to get us kicked off with the first question, which the question for the panel is, how do you capture the impact of your PSE work and how do you share that progress? I think especially with the community that you work with. So Angelica, I know this is something that you touched on in your presentation, so I'll throw it to you first if you want to add anything to what you said.
Sure. Other ways we also captured it is we actually wrote press releases and sent write-ups or op-eds on newspapers, especially ethnic newspaper, particularly focused on the Filipino community, to continue that education. And having more videos and utilizing social media as different ways to continue showcasing the work of the residents, but also the collective work of everyone.
Great. John and Jalal, anything you'd like to share with us about how you share the impact of your PSE work?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Something that we're working to put together right now is like a short-term policy platform. And once we have that put together, we want to sit with politicians and our local supervisors, and also get that out to the community as well, so we can get more community members involved in what we're doing. If we have something physical that we can, that our leadership group and whoever else is part of the council can pass out to their neighbors and things like that, then we can grow the group more and we can let people know more about what we're doing. And then finally, panels like this where we can come and talk about the work, and also, like Food Security Task Force, anytime there's an opportunity, we want to take advantage of it. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Joel.
Yeah, it's very important to be encourage people, because the people has a different language. They cannot explain. That's what we get at. This is our job. It's it's big job we did, because we encourage the people to say without dignity, because the dignity, it's in the different culture, it's different. It's very hard to take off a dignity. So we encourage them to say, yeah, we need a food. You know, it's not easy. It's not easy. I think what we did, it's I will say super job. A super job. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Anthony, how do you capture your impact and share?
Yeah. Well, you know, I have an easy route, which when sales are up, that's a good thing, you know. And what I forgot to mention is a super majority of our subscribers to our community supported agriculture program is you know, qualifies for that discounted box. So I mean, right there is a great, you know, small little measurement of understanding, like when it started small and you see exponential growth. I want to tip my cap to Doctor who was just speaking. He was sharing a little bit of, you can never account for the diversity and the beauty within a group, and just, I always like to say, you never can account for taste, you know. What you know, you can't yuck my yum, right? You know, everyone, you can never account for taste. So dignity and what is satisfaction, I can measure it in the amount of sales. That's one that I mentioned. We can measure it in the amount of engagement and how much direct communication, organization with our community members. But until it becomes a movement, that's typically when you start seeing the success of the integrated system. And I like to look at a lot of us as some of, you know, great movements don't just start with one leader, but it's a group, you know, that comes together to understand how to work together and complement. And so we are all coalescing. You know, John was mentioning how there is the citywide version of this food security task force, where at times we can feel disconnected. And you know, over the years, there's been environmental justice cohorts. You know, this is another one of those cross-sector platforms where you can engage and share those resources amongst ourselves. But I also have to be critical to say that I also feel like sometimes we're so caught up in the work, we don't see and understand the value in coming together like this, into advocating to the city government or those city leaders who have decisions, you know, getting organized to make a real powerful statement that is not fragmented. Okay, so that's where I think we'll have greater impact to say, no, it's not just our neighborhood that needs this, but all these neighborhoods that have been treated historically, because it is no coincidence that you have representatives from the Soma neighborhood, the Tenderloin neighborhood, and the neighborhood here. Okay, it is a historic lineage there that has put us in these predicaments, and yet it is our own history which will inspire us to change it. So, you know, just as far as impacts, I do see it in our sales. We have that opportunity or the need to continue. Oh, here's one right here. Thinking about this, I remember making a note of this prior. The fact that we had hundreds of folks supplying during that, you know, charitable distribution during our COVID era, you know, 2020, 2021, when it was at its highest point and lockdown. A lot of those members still to this day, 3 years later, receive our products. So that says something in itself. It also says something about the need, which we all really needed to address. So that is something that I am unsatisfied with. and we do have to work on, but I'm going to pause on there. I look forward to engaging. Yeah.
Great, thanks. So folks from the audience, again, please feel free to add any questions you have to chat or raise your hand, and we will call on you. In the meantime, I think I'll move on to the next question, which, Anthony, you're right. There is sort of synergy here in terms of neighborhoods. And I think also too, this is obviously a very special and experienced group of people. So I would ask you now what advice you all have to give to folks who are starting this work or maybe are in it and having a hard time sort of seeing it come to fruition. So what advice you would give to folks as they engage in PSE work? And I think we will start with Jalal.
I think we need to be focused to be with the people who has different language, people who has not anything with understanding in English language. these people a lot in Tenderloin and in San Francisco. It's I think they have a lot problem, but they cannot explain this, or they cannot to do that. I advise to be mention this is problem, or they mention this is issue, to be give them accessibility to a language or translation, and encourage them to be talk about this is problem what they need. Even this now in this time, because hard time, everything expensive and get more expensive. I mean about food. That's what I can advise.
Thank you. John, anything else to add from the TNDC perspective?
I think Jalal got it. You know, like, I think it's what I was going to say is to listen, and you know, listen to the community and listen to what they have to say, and then actually implement what they're saying. I think that so often people come into neighborhoods and they come into communities and they say, you know, let's do these focus groups, let's do these surveys, and then there's nothing to be heard of it ever again. They disappear, and it's like, what the hell happened? And people talk about being over surveyed and over analyzed and all this. And so I think Jalal is absolutely right. Like, you have to sit down with the people in the community and listen to what they have to say in all of the different ways that they say it, in all the different languages that they say it. And then you have to take that and you have to work with them. In my opinion, like, you have to work with the community to develop and build out what they're saying, so that it's not just like you come in with as a nonprofit saying, like, I know what's best. The community knows what's best for the community, and they'll tell you because it's their lived experience. And then I think it's about implementing with them the solutions that they collectively come up with. So listening and implementation, I think that's the advice. And then, one more thing, sorry. DPH has been really helpful through this process too. I think the same sort of, like, take the tools that they give you and do the trainings, and, you know, come to everything that they offer, because that as well has been really helpful for me and our program in building this out. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Anthony, advice for folks who are starting on this journey or are on their way?
Yeah, a couple nuggets. One, the power of partnerships. As a wetland ecologist, I often like to be on the boundaries of two opposing ecosystems, okay, where land meets water, or where business meets community, or where parklands meets concrete, right? You know, when we're talking about open space. So don't be afraid to sit on those boundaries, because those are some of the sacred spaces of our world. You know, understanding, like, not just with wetlands, I think I live metaphorically. And when we think about this, these ecotones, as they're called in the traditional scientific field, are where some of the greatest points of change can happen. I've had the privilege through my tenure, not here, but over the years, to partner with state parks, with the Port of San Francisco, with Rec and Park, with the city itself, the Department of Public Health. And many times, you know, we have adversarial relationships with these entities, stakeholders, you know, okay. But what I mean by the power of partnerships is to be transparent, is to be unafraid and vulnerable and ask for the same, but offer you humility, and hopefully that is reciprocated. Because when we start unpacking the history and the layers of why we're in, we start to identify solutions, and we always have the power to be constructive and critical. You know, so when we are in these really tense situations where we're just looking for someone to take accountability of a real dire situation, then we all have to take responsibility for that. And I have seen and I've witnessed these partnerships grow from a place of pain and hurt to a place of growth. I'm not saying everything's done and everything's all good and swept under the rug, but the fact that we're able to partner with institutions and structures that have traditionally been oppressive and transform them. I also want to I also want to share, this is a real modest, like on the ground operational thing, but the value of operations, logistics, and standard operating procedures when it comes to infrastructure. I remember a food security task force a few months back. I bet you some of my colleagues might remember this because I've seen them all on there. That's wonderful. We can't make them all, right? But we do what we can. And when we do show up, we give it our all. But what I took away from that is they were saying, what are some of the challenges? They were querying our group about distribution sites within our neighborhoods, right? Like, what are the challenges at your distribution sites for getting food out to your community? And one of the largest overarching was the infrastructure, the fact that we don't have appropriate cooling for this. We don't have the proper transportation. And that's not unique to what we're doing, yes, but I really want to take it seriously, because unless you're growing the food in your backyard, like I said earlier, or you have a farmer friend that's taking their truck and delivering it to the city, it's got to come to the city. It's got to go through the health and safety standards that we want to protect our own community. So you need the infrastructure to do so, whether you're doing this in a charitable way or not. And that's why we work so darn hard and build those partnerships to allocate this space. There is no coincidence that we're the first nonprofit, and in fact, the first Black-led nonprofit to have a space here, a multi-year lease at the SF Produce Market. And that is a testament of the persistence of not only partnership, but what is due our way when you advocate for what is due for us, okay? So those two aspects, before we pass to Angelica, the power of partnerships and the power of logistics, understanding how big of a role they play so that, we can think beyond our emergency food response and really think about aggregating here. Like, the reason this space is not just for the work that we do, but it's to offer mutual aid to others. We cannot always just think about ourselves, but think about offering mutual aid and opening up our spaces for others. So I encourage all to take those little tidbits of advice, and I look forward to hearing Angelica, what you thinking? You got a lot of advice?
Well, just to add on to what you guys already said, also really investing in building the leadership of residents, may they be youth, adults, seniors, everyone, right? Because to me, I see it as, one day I'm not gonna always be in the neighborhood, right? But we want to make sure that we keep the doors open and making sure that we're passing on the knowledge and skills that was passed on to us by organizers before us. So those are things that I just wanted to add on, that really emphasizing on future leaders, but also existing leaders, and really making sure that a lot of your work is around, aside from listening, really working with those folks and asking them how they would organize or reach out to people. And a lot of the things that we shared with you are from the residents themselves, from the postcards to speaking at City Hall. Those are things that they helped came up with. The only thing we bridged was setting up meetings with their supervisor, and also letting them know who are the decision-making people that they could go to address these issues.
Great, thank you. Some wonderful advice there. So this question is from the chat. So Kim is asking, PSE work is not easy. So how do you all stay motivated and focused on your goals? And Angelica, I'm going to throw it right back to you.
Definitely any struggle is not easy, right? That's why we call it a struggle. But anyways, we had campaigns where we had to work on it for 3 to 5 years or longer, because you're really investing on people and making sure they're with you and they're part of the work that you're doing. So it's when we're working with people, and we're really driven by making sure that they have the skills, the knowledge, and the tools to address the things they want to see in their neighborhood. Those things are always going to be endless. So So to me, one of the things that keeps me motivated is, of course, our members from youth to seniors. And that's why we also have small celebration in between, because, we don't want to just see them in meetings or when we're at hearings. We celebrate birthdays and also different community events to make sure that we're continuing to really build that collective setting of celebration, gathering together, and seeing each other in political spaces as well.
Thank you. Yes, I think joy is perhaps an underutilized tool. Anthony, how about you?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different ways, that I could go with this, but something that kind of ties to the last question that I didn't get to, as far as advice is the aspect around workforce development and hiring from our own community. And it sounds so simple, but when you're accountable, and most often with a lot of nonprofits, we're looking for, sometimes the right fit, or the right asset, but sometimes the right fit is right in front of you. And it takes a little bit more investment, but that happens to keep me motivated, being able to open up doors and invite folks into this work, which, yes, it is a struggle, but it's a beautiful struggle. And when you have folks that you bring on to this movement and they're feeding their own families through this work, it's not only motivating, but you're accountable to them to sustain this work. To when you're feeling down, you're not just thinking about it in the ways like, wow, I'm really being challenged right now, but we're all being challenged, and we can solve it together. And when you have a personal aspect in it, with surrounding yourselves with, many of us, have spoke about this today, the power in, of course, engaging with the community that we serve. We can't do this separate, where we are all community-based organizations. But yet, it's just a reminder to bring on workforce development opportunities and write that into our work so that it is beneficial, so that folks, through that, the outreach, the getting the word out, it feels that much more authentic. It feels that much more effective when you're supporting members of our community through the good work that we're doing through all its constant struggles. So I really, really feel that workforce development is a measure of not only impact, it's advice of a strategy to shoot for, but it's also what we're talking about here, a way to be accountable and keep your joy and be motivated. Because when you see other members in the same situation doing just as much or more, sometimes it's going to keep you to strive for greater, and that's what we have here. So I really am grateful to raise not only my own family, but many families through this great work. And that's something that I'm willing to go, to the end of the line for. Yeah.
Thank you. John or Jalal, what keeps you going at TNDC?
I think, what, as Anthony, he say, it's a lot way to be, keep you going and encourage you to be successful to do that. So, but for me, I think, and my team, it was to make big impact in the diversity community, make impact the people get healthy food, say them happy to talk about them problem. That's because we go in the street, they talking, oh, when we will be meeting, how will they be meeting, what we will be talking about, how we can say, that's encourage you. Oh, we working for the meeting, maybe sometimes all the months, every day we're talking about the meeting. So I think connection with the community, that's most important, what they encourage us, and they say thank you, and that we say happy, and then we make him to participate, to make impact in there. Yeah, thank you, John. If you want that.
John has nothing else. Jalal, you've said it all. So the next question, and I think this may be the last question. If there's a really juicy one, please add it to the chat and we'll tag it on. But the last question is also from the chat. And this question is, in addition to city policy, what can community-based organizations include as internal policies to move this work forward? So is there internal work that you all are doing to support healthy eating, active living, well-being for your employees and coworkers? And this time, I think I'll let whoever wants to go first. I won't call on you. So who would like to answer this question first? Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I'm chomping at the bit because I really have to credit just the whole consortium of the team to put a priority on partnership agreements with the sourcing of the products. So really understanding where our food comes from affects where it goes and who it nourishes, as I said. So building an internal policy to say what is our criteria for food, because healthy food, that's a pretty loose definition, and we can look at it on the micro level and see what is more dense in nutrients than the next. That's a little bit too much, okay? But what we can do is say, us as an environmental justice organization, how can we combat climate change through what we purchase, right? So that policy has to be taken in. There wasn't a roadmap when we first started to say, you have to work with this direct farm because it's good. But through that process, we identified, okay, we have this metric. The first metric is, are you a BIPOC farm when we're developing a new supplier, right? A new farm direct supply, because we have a lot come into this warehouse and a lot goes out to our stores, to our homes, to our community members, correct? So when we think about that, we have to understand, how can we make a greater impact through what we purchase? So most often that's forgotten because we're looking at this through the hunger relief model, and getting any food that is healthier than chips, than soda, than candy is better than the next. But I'm unsatisfied with that, because as we talked about last time, when we have the lowest life expectancy, the highest mortality rate, the highest hospitalization rates, the highest toxicity of our surrounding brownfields, that's accumulated exposure that you have to counterbalance that with much more stringent standards on what we put into our body, what we can access, and what eventually brings us a greater quality of life through our jobs, through our faiths, through our extracurricular activities. So that small policy of saying, no, we will not buy from farms that contribute to climate change. We will not put more money in the pockets of these mega agribusiness corporations, which are pervasive everywhere. Just like the billionaires has shrunk in 5 years from 115 to now 60 or so, right? The same thing is happening in our agricultural fields, which is really something I think that has been hidden from us. But we have some social self-determination to change that, not only through our purchasing behavior, but by doing business differently. And that's one way that I really feel like we've even taught the city on to say, yes, we will take this contract, but you got to understand that the food costs will not be low. These food costs, you are paying the true cost, because we want to change the system, not only here, but redistribute that power to make sure that those farms who are doing farming in ecological ways, who are underrepresented, especially when it comes to the 1% of the 1%, which is our Black farmers in the Central Valley, okay? Only 2% of the population of the states is connected with the agricultural field, almost exclusively that's undocumented. And the other segment of that is the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, which is the landowners and the ones owning the businesses. And we know who they are. So with that said, small policies make big changes.
Wonderful. Angelica or Jalal or John, would you like to take a swing at this?
Yeah, I can take a swing at it. I'm a real firm believer in self-care, and I don't know if this is like a policy or how I don't know how things, I don't know, it within healthy retail, we really make a point to do things that are fun for our team, and to implement like fun, engaging things that are you know, like we were saying earlier, this work is hard. Like you gotta, like, especially in this field, you gotta wake up some mornings and see some, like, see things you don't want to see. And, you know, and then you still have to show up each and every day and get to work, right, Jalal? And, you know, and I know that. And I know that my team shows up every single day. And I want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. I want to make sure that we're taking care of each other. And so I'm part of the community organizing model too, that, you know, at the organization here is that we really do make an effort to take care of ourselves and each other. And so, like, I don't know, we play Jenga every other week as part of our team meeting. We've gotten pretty good at it. Jalal's gotten pretty good at Jenga. So is Tammy. You know, last Friday we do a bi-monthly, like, department like fun day. You know, last week we went out to Jack London Square. We took the ferry out. I don't know if y'all ever taken the ferry on the bay. It's like a luxury yacht for us folks out here. It's really fun, and doing these things, it brings us together. It makes seeing the shit easier when you can look across the desk and be like, that's not just my coworker, that's my homie, that's my compadre, that's like this person, you know, I shared a meal with, that, you know, in Jack London, right? Like, I think that these things make a difference in us being able to do the work long term. And I don't know if I don't know if that's like a policy. Like, I don't think we wrote that down anywhere, but it is a part of our model in the community organizing office, and it's definitely a part of how I manage the healthy retail team. And I think that has made our, you know, this is my fam for sure. Like, and I think that comes from coming closer together in those ways. And then I think that the last part to this too is Anthony's piece earlier about hiring from the community. I think that makes a big part to this too. Like hiring internally from the neighborhood, I think is huge. And so I want to uplift that, as well as like a policy that, you know, isn't written outside, but you could be written inside as a way to, you know, maintain the work and keep the work going. So yeah, definitely hiring from the community, I think, is an internal policy that could be uplifted as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. I think you have described a systems change to center fun and self-care. Angelica, how about for you? Anything you'd like to share or add here?
Again, just want to uplift the hiring from the community. You know, we have folks as staff started off as youth organizers with us, and is now doing tenant counseling work and tenant organizing, right? And also really ensuring that regardless of what community you're in, that you also have language access for folks. That's really crucial, especially if it's a multi-language neighborhood. So being mindful of those things, as well as all the fun things that folks have been sharing of self-care, and also encouraging collective self-care, so we're not isolating ourselves and, you know, just doing things on our own, but really finding ways to address issues together and having that collective discussions together.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think we're going to tuck in one last question, which is from Marianne. And I think each of you have talked sort of extensively about the central role that organizing plays in your work. And so her question is, what advice do you have on how to effectively cultivate policy champions? And Angelica, I might start with you. I think it was obviously quite moving to see community members testifying in front of a committee. So I wonder if you would share a little bit about cultivating policy champions.
I think one of the things I wasn't able to include in the slides because of limited time was actually us really walking the residents on how policies are created and passed at City Hall, and who are all the different what we call targets, or people that can that you need to speak with to win your campaign, right? Really making sure that there is a step-by-step campaign campaign organizing strategy where we're walking residents and teaching them the tools to actually go through that, from identifying the issue to researching those issues to coming up with a campaign and strategy plan, and then actually implementing that, because we don't want to just talk the talk. We want to make sure we also have people walking those walks, right? And that they're also bringing their family and or friends or folks in the community in that ride, to make sure that we're continuing to build that collective power and bringing people together. So those are one of the ways we've seen this happen, successfully with youth, with parents, with seniors, and, really having that, and also including assessment. I forgot to add that, assessing our work, because there's some things that might work or might not work, and ensuring that we assess those things to ensure that, we're not continuing to knock on the same doors of the targets when they're really not the targets, right? And targets could be like politicians or department staff and things like that. So those are things that we internally do to really ensure that people have that tools of not just knowing who the targets are, but also working backwards to understand how can they actually win the campaign by understanding the power dynamics that's happening at City Hall.
Wonderful, thank you. Anthony, John, Jalal, anyone want to add?
I'll be real quick. I mean, policy is personal, so it when it affects people's lives, you have a captive audience. And the more we engage with one another, we're understanding where we can harness that energy and take frustration, disenfranchisement, disappointment, all of those, and harness it into action. So it's nothing new. The only thing that, demystifying the bureaucratic blur, is like what Angelica was saying around like really understanding, but we understand where power is concentrated. Not everyone wants to feel engaged by just understanding the political process. So I think one strategy that I personally am, I prescribe to is really the reverse engineering of that. And of course, like really building that robust community base of our frustration, but being able to take that to the decision makers. So those understanding where those platforms are and ensuring that we can show up to those platforms, not only in the virtual format, but going down to, decision-making meetings, whether they be based at City Hall or elsewhere. So it's being able to represent, because they really do matter into building a movement. One lesson, the last thing I want to say, one lesson that we learned is that sometimes something like the Food Security Task Force, that isn't the best space to discuss some of these policy changes and build a movement internally there. So sometimes you got to create your own. And really thinking about how to leverage those platforms already, but say, I love y'all are great, but it's not going to work this well. So don't be held back from creating those spaces because again, they will affect that type of policy change in just a different way that hopefully will have much more authentic and actual outcomes that will benefit those populations. Okay. So I'm really, really, just so grateful for this, and I know John and Dr. Jalal still can speak, but I just really had it's been I haven't had much time to reflect on this work all the time. We get caught up in doing it, and I see John around, I see Dr. Jalal around, I know Angelica, but to hear kind of your perspectives, I just to share that with my colleagues, it inspires me, and that's no BS. So thank you all. Yeah.
I will be add something. I think it's more important to be working with the community at the street. It's more important. It will be give you the first feeling you something get or do impact, because sometimes we do community engagement at the street. That it's help us. It help us to be know the problem, what they have for the problem with people, with the issue, and we give him information about to how to keep them health. It's healthy, how they eat, how the sugar impact, how the chemical something in the food, how they can to take off and to be live healthy. That's it's coming from contact with the community, to go basic, to go with people who's at the street. And it's also in the family. If you want to get do impact and feel that, start with youth family, start with you who's near you. When you get a result and you see the result and you feel in that's make you strong and give you energy to be continuing. And I mean, it will be helpful for you to be go up and continue. Thank you.
Thank you. What a wonderful note to end on. So I want to say thank you so much to all of you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. And I completely agree with you, Anthony. This has been a lovely and fulfilling and enriching experience. So really appreciate all of you taking the time to share your experiences with us. I have taken us right down to the wire, but I did promise that I would show this last slide. So if you enjoyed your time here, I have good news. There is an in-person opportunity to gather with the Shape Up San Francisco Coalition, and the registration link is there on the screen. I'm sure we'll also send it in a follow-up email. So we'll hope to see many of you on November 16th in person. And then just the final thing is, much like Angelica, we are always trying to assess our programs and make sure that they're impactful. So when you close this out, there will be a very short survey. If you would take the time to answer it, that would be much appreciated. And just in these final moments, I hope you will all join me in a sort of virtual round of applause for our panelists, and also very importantly for our organizers, for Marianne and Kim, who have done so much to make this happen. So thank you all for being with us today. And I will hope to see many of you out on the streets, as Dr. Jalal has told us. And Anthony, if you are inside of a warehouse, I am so jealous. It is too warm today in the city. So thank you all.
Thank you.